Hello, what's the crack? How's it going, everyone? Welcome to Talking Pictures, your weekly Wednesday waffle. My name's Brian and I'll be your co-host today with my good friend who's also a co-host for this show, because that's really real. We're either both co-hosts or we're both hosts in general. David, how the hell are you?
I'm brilliant, Brian. How are you today?
Ah, swell. Did you see the trailer?
It depends which trailer you're talking about. Which trailer?
As of the time of recording this, the Super Bowl is not happening, so we're going to have to reserve whatever's going to be released for that major event for next week's episode. But we've all seen the prequel movie trailer to A Quiet Place, Day One.
Yes.
Eagerly excited to see what's going to be in this movie. Suits it quite well to have it be titled Day One, because when you watched the first two movies, you would have a flash forward and a flash back of day such and such and such, especially in the second Quiet Place where it says Day One and we see the perspective of the family, the likes of Emily Blunt and John Krasinski, whereas we are getting A Quiet Place Day One. This is from the perspective of completely new characters, hopefully listening characters who are not hard of hearing, because we want to see how people with regular hearing survived this outbreak, and Lupita Nyong'o is our lead character, and we got some interesting other actors in the movie as well, with Joseph Quinn from Stranger Things as Eddie, and we have Alex Wolff, who's quite famous for, well, Hereditary or the Jumanji movies, and we have my man Jaimin Hansu. Yeah, he's coming back since it's a prequel. He was in the second Quiet Place movie, and now he's in this here. He's currently listed as Man on Island, so we're obviously going to get some backstory with him, and so delighted that he got that role instead of Brian Tyree Henry. Did you know that Brian Tyree Henry was cast as that man?
I think I knew it.
Drop out.
I knew it just based on you telling me it, but it's not one of those things that lives in my brain, unfortunately. But I'm glad that you got Digimon Hansu?
Jaimin Hansu.
Okay, perfect. Well, I'm glad that he gets to make a reappearance for you. The one thing I really liked about the trailer, you just kind of put stuff in perspective for me, is they have that, obviously they're drawing on the fact that you've seen the other Quiet Place movies. They have the clips from the first one and then the second one with Cillian Murphy. But they have that little thing where it's like day 400 and something, and then it's literally them sitting around the table all having dinner, and then it ticks over like 4 days and it's Cillian Murphy running on the island. I'm like, oh yeah, you forget like these movies take place in such a quick amount of time that they're sitting around having dinner, and then all of a sudden John Krasinski's dead, she's had the baby, all this stuff is taking place over the course of 4 days. It's really like they are sequels, like back-to-back sequels. So it'll be good to see. And like you were saying there, taking it now from the perspective of someone who isn't hard of hearing, it'll be interesting because it wasn't immediate that they realised that it was sound that they were able to find them. So hopefully we'll get to see it from a completely different aspect of people who are completely scared shitless and do not realise that this is what is essentially their superpower, is their super hearing.
Yeah, because when you see the first movie, you're watching this family. How did this family survive? Well, they communicate each other through sign language, so they've been able to get by communicating without making noise, and they've elevated that around their living to make it their entire environment of survival. So I will be interested. I won't be watching any more trailers of it, but it will be interesting to see where will this end for our lead character. Because we know how the world goes, at least from a certain perspective or a certain locational area, for as we have seen in the first two movies. But where will this prequel take us with Lupita Nyong'o's character? It'll be interesting to see. I hope it's not a dire one. I don't want it to end harshly. And
do we know the release date for this?
June 28th.
June 28th. Okay, perfect. Not that long to wait then.
Yeah. But that's what's great about having a calendar. Dave, I think we'll move on to today's topic.
Yes, the one I'm very excited to talk about.
Yeah, it doesn't matter that we're in 2024. It's not our fault. 2023 movies get released in the first 2 months of the following year. We're in Ireland. That's what happens to us. But it didn't stop us from seeing the likes of The Iron Claw, Zac Efron's single movie that you watch and you think not only is he delivering the best performance probably in his career, but also a profile of, hey look, I can be Wolverine. And if you think no, well then go watch him in Baywatch, because as shit as that movie, it equivalates to the complete shreddedness of his physique that yes, he can indeed be Wolverine. And if you just want to tie it home together, he worked with Hugh Jackman in The Greatest Showman. So he's also a song and dance man. So it's pretty much continuing that ideology of who an actor needs to be in order to portray Wolverine. A completely jacked song and dance man.
It's great to see. I kind of nearly compare him in a way to Robert Pattinson, in the same sense that they've come from movies that they like. He's a childhood star, and then Robert Pattinson was in the Twilight movies, so this is now their opportunity to be taken seriously as an actor, and this feels like the first time that Zac Efron has had this, you know, because he had like the Baywatch movies, and he had like Dirty Grandpa and stuff like that, but this is the first time that he really gets to flex his acting chops of, no, I'm here to act, and I'm going to deliver a stellar performance. The same way that Robert Pattinson did that, going from Twilight straight through to becoming the Batman.
Sure, remember, he was in the Firestarter, that remake horror movie that wasn't so good, but he still did it. He portrayed Ted Bundy, remember that?
Yeah.
Don't forget, he was also in this movie, quite an interesting movie called Parkland. He was a doctor trying to perform the surgery on the president, JFK, and you know that was a very like ensemble cast with characters, different perspectives. So like that's Zac Efron's in this. Oh, cool. So no, Zac Efron's no more that 17 again, High School Musical, whatever. He's here, and he's definitely a solid actor to be taken seriously. So we have him here in this movie. Feels like he was a spearhead in this movie, but he's not listed as a producer. But this movie, first I'll call it a wrestling movie, but it's not a wrestling movie. It's definitely much deeper, but it follows this family, the Von Erichs, which a family I've never heard of, but I think people older than us, probably in America, would have heard that story, the Von Erichs. Royal family in the wrestling industry. And it's about him and his brothers trying to work under the patriarchy, hard iron fist and thumb of their father, who for the sake of argument and lack of a better word, is a dick.
I can't believe, sorry, before you go any further, I can't believe you said that they were under his iron fist and iron thumb, and you didn't say that they were under his iron claw. That was just so obvious. I can't believe you didn't say that.
Oh, it's not easy to host this one, David.
Sorry.
Because it got emotional.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I thought, like, well, not that I thought, but there can be the thought that you're going into this movie to see a pro wrestling family, and you're going to go into this, and if you don't come out of this crying, I don't know what movie you saw, because I dropped a few tears now at this. Not at various stages, but towards the end it finally hit me. But I think throughout the whole movie it is just your heart sinks for this family, because I'm the same as you. I hadn't heard about them. I didn't know anything about them. Now, I'm not a fan. I'm not even going to say a big fan. I'm not a fan of wrestling, pro wrestling, anything like that. So this whole aspect of it was nothing but new to me. So learning about them and seeing their progression and the love that they have for each other, but being forced to compete against each other by their father, it was heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And seeing them go through the trials and tribulations, not only that the sport provides, but the life that they're living, what they have to go through, it was tough to watch.
Yeah, this movie, it felt like this movie treats wrestling no different than any other boxing movie. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter if it's rigged, it doesn't matter if it's pre-arranged, or if, as they would call it, performances. When you see these brothers wrestle and do the Iron Claw in the ring, all for the sake of standing up for their father, it's treated as serious and dire as a Rocky movie would be when Rocky fights the likes of Creed, Drago, or Clubber Lang. And still treats it as such, because you're still getting banged up, you're still getting hurt, there's still that chance you can lose, there's still that chance that you have to perform. As we see, it's actually really tough to perform because one of the brothers, who's not a wrestler, struggles very hard, so we can get into that in a little bit. But this movie treats wrestling equivalent to how Creator Rocky movies treats the boxing matches.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if it's pre-arranged, as I said, doesn't matter if it's not a fight or win or lose type of situation. It treats it as such, and you believe it. And the physicality and the workout that the brothers have to do, it's not a positive one to listen to or watch when going out to the gym, no matter how hulking these monsters are. This family, right, I said this movie is not really about the wrestling. I wish they didn't really call it out so much. I wish it was more, they would let the audience take it in, but they did keep on referring to the family curse quite a few times. That because the father didn't have his shot to become the world heavyweight champion. They had the eldest brother who passed away when he was 5, and so Zac Efron, who plays Kevin, he's the oldest living brother. He's got the next youngest brother, David Harris Dickinson. He's got the next youngest brother, who's Jeremy Allen White, who's Kerry, and then they got another brother, Mike, who's prefers the more music as opposed to the wrestling. So, and even Kerry as well, Jeremy Allen White, who's probably the second lead brother or character in the movie, especially given the name. He starts off with being playing for football, but then that doesn't go too well for him. So, and the father, Holt McKinley, who I know from Mindhunter, plays Fritz, and what a fucking cunt. He's trying to use his sons to achieve his dream, and he's very old-fashioned in the worst way. Been a while since I've seen this in the movie, but just flat out calling out, you're my favourite, and then you're my favourite, and then you're my favourite, and then you're my last favourite, to all the brothers, and then the rankings can change. So as if the brothers have to win the approval of their father, and their father, he goes to a few of the brothers in the movie. I want you to come wrestle with your brothers, and I believe you can bring the belt home for this family. He says that to Zac Efron. Then he says it to Jeremy Allen White because Zac Efron lost the World Heavyweight Champion match. And then he tries to push Zac Efron aside to let the Harris Dickinson brother, David, to take that position. And then even so, he's forcing the youngest brother in the movie, Michael, who's sensitive to say the least. He's trying to force that on him as well. And even though the brothers might acknowledge the love and care and looking out for each other, none of the brothers stand up to the father throughout the movie. Until the end, but we'll get to that. For me, when I was watching it, I'm hitting home the point I was trying to make, is for me, watching this movie, I'm not looking for Zac Efron to win the wrestling match that would make him the world heavyweight champion and to win the approval of his father. No, that would not be the resolution I would want from this movie, and rightfully so. It's him standing up to his father, because his father, he's the villain of the movie.
Absolutely.
And we haven't even gotten into the curse of this movie, David. I think folks are tired of listening to me talk. Perhaps you'd like to shed some light into this.
Well, like you're saying there, right? The resolution of Zac Efron's character of Kevin, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, of Kevin winning the title. That's not what it is, because I think it's very clear from when he has the date with Lily James, when they're on their first date, and she's like, "Oh, what do you want?" And he's like, "I want to live in a big house with all my family around," And then I'm pretty sure then he says he wants to be the
World Heavyweight Champion.
So he very clearly, his main goal is his family, and that's seen throughout. There is another level of love between all of this family that just doesn't extend to the mother and the father. All of the brothers, now, don't get me wrong, they do have a bit of, teasing each other and stuff like that. At the start, when the boys come in, when Kevin and David come in, they're robbing bacon off of Mike's plate, even though there's a big plate of bacon there. that anyone could take off of, but they're stealing food off his plate, and there's a bit of ribbon and stuff like that. But there's at no point do they hate each other, are they fighting with each other. Like, there's no point really where they're knocking each other. Like, these big guys that are pro wrestlers, they're not fighting each other ever. All they care about. Go ahead.
Just they're sneaking out together. We'll get a burger with you, brother, and they're looking after each other. There's no sibling maliciousness going on. Like, proper brotherly love.
Yeah.
And when Zac Efron, to go on the point where this love does not extend to the parent, Zac Efron goes to the mother, hey, I think Dad's being harsh on Mikey, the youngest brother, and she said, that is between you and your brothers to deal with.
Yeah.
And that line is repeated later on when the crux of the direness is really on screen. And the father says that same thing, and the father who proclaims his love for his brothers, he loves for what he's getting them to do. So that's why they all look out for each other. And when we are seeing this movie through the perspective of Kevin, Zac Efron's character, because the way the movie concludes and how the story goes, it is the most natural way to depict this movie. It's not as if we couldn't really watch this movie from the lens of any of the other brothers, because the story doesn't conclude really there. Because we've foreshadowed the curse that is presented in this movie, a curse that we were told once, and then I thought maybe we were told 3 times too many afterwards, like if we just watch it unfold as opposed to spelling it out for us. But this curse, what is this curse? The curse is that the worst things that could happen to this family, who, especially the brothers who love each other, does happen. Because when they're all together after Kerry's back from playing football and Zac Efron,
he was part of the Olympic team. He wasn't. He was doing the discus.
Right. Well, when they're all together and they're doing great, David, he's been told by the father, my son, he gonna win that belt. And he says that in that wide shot that zooms in on him with the 3 brothers behind him acting. And then when he says that and you just look at Zac Efron's reaction, it's like, what? And then just look at the brothers' reaction. Like, that's the father being that controlling manager. In musician biopics, you'd have the performer, the artist making all the songs, and then normally the villain of the movie is the manager who's taking advantage of them. Well, in this movie, the manager is the father who is taking advantage of them, trying to get his dreams through putting his sons through the brute force of it all, taking them away from what they want to do, so he gets them to do what he wants to do.
The best way I could describe it was that it felt that each of the sons, right, the father is trying to fit a square peg to a round hole, that he, no matter what, wants them to be what he wants them to be. There's no allowing them to be themselves. Like, the closest that anyone got to that was Kerry. The way he went over, he was going to become an Olympian. And even at that, it's only really because of the status of it, that he's going to become an Olympian, he's going to win the gold there, that's a huge status thing. Because there's no allowance for Mike, who wants to be a musician. And Mike, he nearly broke my heart the most, I think, when he's up on that stage and he's absolutely loving it. He is a great musician and he loves being a musician. He has the support of his brothers. They come to pick him up from the rehearsals and they're clapping, saying it's great, let's go get burgers, having a great time. Then they're sneaking him out to go to the college party so that he can perform with the band. There's just, that is what he should be doing. That is what Mike should be doing to this day. He should be a musician and loving his life. But unfortunately, because of what his dad wants, bulk up if you want to ever start wrestling with your brothers. And that's something he doesn't want to do. You can tell. You can tell that realistically, and I don't know if this really applies to David, but when you look at the physique of Kevin compared to David, like Zac Efron's Kevin, he is a tank. He is huge. He dedicates his life. He wakes up in the morning and he goes for his run. He's straight away, he's working out every single day to become the heavyweight champion. Whereas the rest of them, Kerry is away to be on the Olympics. It's only because of the fact that America pulls out of that year of the Olympics that he has to come home. And he's working on the farm or whatever, and his dad comes along and says, I want you to join your brothers in the ring. And he's like, okay, yeah, sure. Because he doesn't really see anything else for himself at that moment. He has no other option. And it's only then does he, start to become that. And David, I suppose, he did want to become a wrestler, I guess, but
because he was well spoken, he was able to present for marketing purposes and advertisement. That's why the father shoved him into the forefront.
That's all it took.
Tremendous pressure. Yeah,
like it's literally there. Zac Efron, Kevin, when he is at it's not a title fight or anything, but he's fighting the current heavyweight champion, and he wins by disqualification. And he's standing there in pain, like you were saying earlier, right, about the whole, is it fake, is it scripted, whatever. It may be scripted,
rigged.
But is it rigged? It may be scripted that we know kind of roughly where it's going to go, but Zac Efron is still smashed onto the concrete. They are still putting their bodies through these incredible feats of fighting each other. So just because he's standing there and he can't get the words out, he's not a great spokesperson. We know that from an earlier scene anyway. As soon as David gets up there and he's able to speak, the father, like a light bulb in his head, and he just is like, okay, I'm focusing it all on David now, even though it's Kevin that really wants it and he's put in the most work and he deserves it. It's okay, what's the best opportunity for me here now? And it's to go with David.
Well, you see, then this is the path the movie's going. Zac Efron was at the top, even though he wasn't a favourite in the rankings of his father. Now he's going down the levels because he's putting David ahead. Zac Efron's still on a good path, though. By this point, he's with Lily James and he's married. And you see all the brothers just having a great time together, just dancing. Even that shot where the four brothers and Zac Efron's wife, Lily James, they're dancing together. That was actually pretty cool. It's like, High School Musical. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
But that tracking shot, it starts with Kerry, it goes to, was it Lily James, then Zac Efron, then Mike, and then that tracking shot ends with David. And David's getting sick. And there's nothing, even though Zac Efron was a little mad at the situation that David's been given the opportunity to fight, to wrestle, pushed by his father in Tokyo, Japan. There's still that brotherly love. There's no, like, we're good, like, no, they're not fighting, and that's that really, really, really hits the punch of the love for these brothers they have for each other. It's just wow.
There's small moments of it, and it's very clearly misdirected anger, because of the, like that moment where they're in the ring and you think that Hank has misspoken, and he says like, my son David is gonna be the new heavyweight champion, and Zac Efron's face drops, and then even David says that he like comes over to him, he's like, I'm sure he misspoke, and he's like, yeah, how do you know that? Like, and then the father turns around and goes, is there a problem here? Do you know that he's not taking any of it? He's like, no, I said what I said. So anytime there is like an anger, it's misdirected. It's anger towards the father that's misdirected to a brother, but no one holds on to that. It's clearly like they all know really where this anger is coming from. And then it happens a little bit later on when after David's passing, we're getting into the curse now, but after David's passing in Japan, that they're all sitting outside and the father
sunglasses on.
This is after that. Sorry, they take off sunglasses. He says, "I don't want to see any tears. Like, show everyone your faces." But then after the funeral and all, the father's sitting down and he's talking with the boys and he says, "Like, we have an opportunity here, and one of you has to take David's place in the title." Like, he's already back on this. Like, the day of his son's funeral, he's back on it.
Yeah,
and there's the
still chasing his dreams through whatever sons he has at his disposal.
Whatever he's left.
Yeah. And since David is gone, David was, this is the start of it. Once David passed, this was the start of the down spiral of everything that can happen, does happen.
And then Kevin and Kerry start fighting each other, or not fighting each other, but he's saying like, who wants to take the spot? And Kevin, who rightfully it was Kevin's to begin with. David took it, and now Kevin has the opportunity to get it back. And then Kerry's like, no, I want it. And he's like, what are you talking about? This is mine. And he's like, no, I can do it. And there's a bit of animosity there between the two of them. But it's, once again, misdirected from the father, is putting them in this situation that they shouldn't be in at all. Kerry should be at the Olympics. That's not his fault that he's not there. But he's now following the dream of his father. The father's put him in this position to be an opposing force to his brother, which he should never be. So, but I'm glad then, later on, that with his successes as Kerry, he does go on. They just flip a coin, to be who gets to do this. And it's Kevin has put in the work, he's been doing it for years, and then it's okay, well, we'll flip a coin, because the father, he doesn't want to be the one to, I suppose, he doesn't want to be, even though he is the bad guy, he doesn't want to be seen as the bad guy by either of them, so he puts it down to a coin flip, and then Kerry's the one that obviously wins it. So he goes on to then become the heavyweight champion. He
does bring home the belt. But kind of, we're getting to a stage now where I thought maybe at this point, we're seeing Kerry drinking a lot of alcohol the past few scenes, and he's brought home the belt. And Zac Efron's walking into the kitchen, Kevin, talking to Kerry, that should have been mine, you took my place. No. He's completely supporting him, supporting his brother about it. Mm-hmm. And I think once David passed away, the meat of the relationship among the brothers was definitely between Kevin and Kerry. Mm-hmm. I know Mike is still there and he's still doing his thing, but the main stage of the showdown was between them two. And so Kerry goes for a ride, and just like I didn't know David died in Tokyo, oh shit, are we actually doing this? Did this actually happen? Because you're seeing the perspective of the motorbike as if you're looking at it yourself. You're looking at the speed of the motorbike on the road going 100 kilometers per hour, and you see in the distance vehicle lights coming up, and you get the revving of the motorbike just keeps going up and up and up, and there's no slowing down, there's no getting prepared to stop. You just did he actually fucking just like crash and die? Did another brother just die? And I mean, are these? Is this what it is? And no. The next scene, oh cool, fine, he's right. Just got a couple of bandages, bruises. Oh, he's just on the crutches. That's not too bad. He's just wearing a cast. He comes into the kitchen into the wide shot, and his fucking foot is gone. Yeah. So now, his wordiness of being in the ring is completely dampened now. So it's up to Zac Efron to keep going, but he's now having reserves about raising his family by having the Von Erich name in it, so he changes his son's name, and now he's now
coming into, he's believing this Von Erich curse that he's been preaching about the whole time, but now he's finally seeing it in action, that his brother David has died and Kerry has lost his leg.
And now, as due to a shortage of Von Erich brothers, they're forcing Mike into the wrestling. And Zac Efron, he doesn't like giving out to his brother, telling him what to do and how to do it and how to wrestle, which actually is a pretty difficult thing to do because you have to do it right. And then you see poor Mikey perform in the ring, and you see actually how difficult it is, because you have to lift your body to kick someone, you have to be engaged, and you have to make them convinced. That is actually hard to keep up that performance, let's call it, to keep it so. And look what happens. It's rigged, but it's not fake, because he fucks up his elbow, poor Mikey. The sensitive brother, the youngest brother in the movie.
The guy who should be playing in concerts. He should not be anywhere near a ring at all.
Yeah, we cut to a hospital, and the doctor comes to the father and Kevin, Zac Efron. To whatever many words he says to explain why, he's in a coma. Mm-hmm.
This is almost worse than dying, honestly. When the doctor came out and said that, I was like, oh no. Just because I felt he was so innocent. He was probably one of my favourite of the brothers, just because I just liked him a lot. And then to have him be, the doctor come out and say, yeah, it was a normal routine surgery and he just took a bad reaction to something and he's in a coma. And we'll just have to wait and see. And then when later on, when he comes out of the coma, but he's just not right anymore. He's not who he was.
He's slow responding, he's slow taking in communication.
He can't play the guitar anymore. He can't.
And the look of his father with just utter disappointment, looking at his son, thinking, pathetic.
Yeah.
You can see it in his face. And still they're going on with trying to push them still.
Yeah, when are you going to be back in the ring? You know, and he's...
Yeah.
He can barely string... Well, he can string a sentence together, but he's so delayed in it. And, like, really, Zac Efron, Kevin, should have been there to say, like, we're just going to take it one day at a time, you know, rather than try and push him. Because I think he does kind of say, like, we'll be back as soon as we can. But he should have just, like, we're just going to focus on Mikey at the moment. But, do you want to jump into some flashbacks just before we go any further? Just because we're kind of roughly around the halfway point.
I need a break before we get into the next part of the movie.
Yeah, it's going to get... the Von Erich curse does not lighten up, let me tell you that. But before we get into that, Laura, play that jingle for us. Thank you, Laura. So, we've got some flash facts for the Iron Claw. Flash fact number 1. Did you know that this film had its world premiere in Dallas, Texas, the same evening that the SAG-AFTRA strike ended? Many of the actors found out the news through journalists on the red carpet. Now, the reason that they were on the red carpet, they were allowed to do this, is because the distribution company A24, they had made a deal with SAG-AFTRA before the strikes had ended, while the negotiations were still going on. They went to SAG-AFTRA and said, whatever deal you come to, we agree to it. We preemptively say that whatever the end result is, we already agree. So they were then given the permission to, you can continue promoting your films, you can continue shooting your films. I'm fairly sure Priscilla was one of these films as well, and the Iron Claw, so they were able to continue doing their stuff, which is, great to see.
Well, good on A24 for doing this. It's a funny thing as well. This feels like such a mainstream movie for A24, and it's just another great one in the bank. But definitely this movie, I don't recall much press for this movie, but definitely needed it. Eventually, the actor strike is just becoming, is soon to become a distant memory, because this movie's come and gone. And like I said, we only saw this movie within a week before we recorded this, and that's just because it just wasn't released in Ireland.
It's a shame, because I would have, in the same way that you said that The Holdovers would have been in your top 10, this absolutely would have been in my top 10. Very easy. I'm very close to the top. Yeah, I loved it. I really, really enjoyed this film from start to finish.
Well, Dave, the thing about doing whatever you want in relation to the podcast is we can do whatever we want. So if you feel like you want to make this in your top 10 in 2023, you, my friend, go for it.
Yeah, I think I will. Maybe I'll readjust my top 10 list. So, flash fact number 2. It was established that there were 5 brothers, but in real life there were 6. One of the brothers, Fritz Von Erich, was omitted from the film. When speaking to the director, it was revealed that the reason that he was omitted was due to timing and pacing issues. However, the way that Kevin found Kerry shortly after he committed suicide in the film was actually the exact way Kevin found Chris after he committed suicide in real life. In real life, Kerry was actually found by his dad in their field. So we're obviously jumping a little bit ahead there in the flashbacks about what we're going to talk about later, but there was a 6th brother that the director kind of came out and said, like, it's hard to take one of them out, but at a point it does become very, very sad, and it's almost unbelievable.
I have 2 things to say to that, or maybe 3. Number 1, I did hear someone talk about, why did you not include this brother and their suicide? Well, then I'm thinking, I forgot the name of the brother, so I just presumed it was going to be one of these brothers here. But as we're watching the movie, as it progresses, so what was that person talking about? Because what I'm watching here, I'm watching what they've said. So I was a little confused, so I wasn't really sure about a brother being omitted. The second thing is, you maybe could have found a way to include this brother into this movie. Yes, timing and pacing would be an issue, but it could have been done still. I suppose you just gotta think of this as, this is a dramatized version of the events that is inspired by the actual true story. So okay, fair enough. because there are, I don't know if you have these in your flashback sections, but there is actually more stuff that was left out.
I know the only other thing I know about was that David actually had a daughter that died as well. She was 1 year old.
And Kerry had a family.
I didn't know Kerry had a family. Okay.
Kerry had a family. He had a wife, or at least a partner, and he had 1 or 2 kids.
Wow.
And one of his kids is actually daughter is actually a wrestler right now.
Oh wow.
So,
okay.
Omitted from the movie. Yes, okay, timing issues and pacing issues, fair enough. And because actually how you described to me how Chris was, how he passed away and how he was discovered, his passing was discovered, mirrored 1 or 2 of the other brothers and their passing or their suicides or them being discovered. It was too similar for how it was already going to be presented in this movie, so they just sort of like they had Mikey, they had him sort of represent the 2 brothers, Mikey and Chris, because yes, I looked this up later myself, and that's how I took it as, or that's how I was informed of it. However, David, I don't think this movie has the excuse, if that's the right way for me to phrase it, to say that no, we can't include this brother's death because it's just getting to the point where it's too sad. I'm sorry. Did you watch Schindler's List?
Life is sad. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think that's a valid excuse. So that's all I'm gonna say. Like, we're not gonna include this brother because too many brothers already die in this movie. But I just don't think it's a valid excuse. That's all I'll say.
Fair enough. Yeah. No. Absolutely. And then flashback number 3. When Kerry reaches heaven, quotes heaven, he places the same coin his father used to decide who would fight Ric Flair on the boat seat. This is a reference to Greek mythology in that people ferried to the afterlife have to pay the boatman Charon for passage.
Oh, that actually makes sense.
Yeah, I kind of got that when we were in that scene. When he put that coin down, like I obviously didn't know it was the same coin as the one his dad flipped, but that's how I kind of felt. I was like, okay, he's paying the ferryman. That's how I thought about it. Now I don't know about you, but how did you interpret that scene, that heaven scene? Because you can interpret it in 2 different ways, and that being that Kerry was in heaven, or that was Kevin's his interpretation of he was justifying it to himself, like, okay, they're all together now. He's comforting himself with that thought, as opposed to it being an actual representation of heaven, you know?
I didn't like the idea of thinking about that it's heaven. Just flat out straight. This was not now, okay, fair enough. There was that one shot where the mother was watching the TV, watching one of the brothers on TV, and you see the ghost, let's call it, of David sitting on the stairs, but he's out of focus and he's very blurred out and he's morphed into vanishing, so like he's not completely all there. But okay, fair enough, that's there, but that was just one foreshadow or one element to introduce the cause of depicting this version of heaven at the end of the movie with Kerry. I didn't like it. I'll eat my words if I'm describing it wrong, but I thought it was a little bit cringe. I liked how it started off where Kerry's walking. Oh, is this the lead up to it where he's going to see Zac Efron come up and he's going to do it quick? No, he's just walking out of the house. He's got his 2 feet. Alright, it's heaven. Oh, it's on the boat. Oh, I see. Hey, brothers. I didn't like it. Yeah, it would present itself as being heaven. I would prefer it that this is what Kevin would have thought, or what Kevin was thinking. Maybe if they just, with a little bit of extra master editing of hitting home that this is what Kevin is thinking now, that his brothers are all together. Because it feels like it's a very too simple of a cut to Kerry and the brothers, cut the back to Zac Efron. I thought maybe that was just very too simple to still portray it as vague. Because I didn't think it was Kevin thinking this. I thought this was a nice scene to have in the movie for the real life Kevin Von Erich, who's now in his mid to late 60s, to watch this movie and watch this scene and to just bring some closure for him to watch and let him think for himself. I thought maybe that's how I thought about it when watching the scene, because I did not want to think about it as heaven, because I just didn't dug it. I didn't look at it like that. But I would have preferred that it was Zac Efron's Kevin in the movie to think that, because if it took me out in the movie is what I'm trying to say. It took me out to think about the real life situation. This is probably a nice scene for Kevin Von Erich, the real life guy, to do that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. See, I think I haven't sat on it for a couple of days now and thinking about it, and I'm going to get into some heavy stuff here now just for a moment, but I don't think it's a very fair thing to display, because obviously there's a lot of people that struggle with their mental health, and there's, you know, people that are going to commit suicide. I think that this kind of nearly portrays a really bad way to look at suicide. When Kerry kills himself, that's it, his problems are over, and he's in heaven with all his brothers, exactly what he wanted. He's got his leg back, and he's going to be happy now for the rest of his existence. And I think that that's really an unfair way to present this, you know, for guys for young people, not even just guys, but young people that are struggling with their mental health and maybe contemplating suicide, and then they see this and they see that, oh, okay, all of my problems are answered. But it's not like that. Nobody knows what it's going to be like, and I'll absolutely eat my words in the afterlife if it's exactly like that, but we don't know it's like that. So I think it in this aspect, it is a bit of a harmful way to portray the afterlife, because just so many people are struggling with thoughts of suicide, and it's never the answer. It's
given suicide ideation a cause that is it definitely shouldn't be given.
It romanticizes it a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah. It presents itself as a bit of a positive light to, God fucking forbid, to actually get people to actually think about it and to go through with it, because not that watching too many movies could make what people think this, but it could still generate the ideation of suicide and make them carry out the act, because that's not what the case is at all.
Yeah.
So just for that reason alone, David, I really think this should have just dedicated that scene to exactly how Zac Efron's Kevin thought of it.
Yeah, just a conversation later on with the wife, you know, if she said, where do you think they are? And then if he narrated over it or something like that, just this is what I think or something like that. But just a very clear distinction.
I thought, like I said, with the master of a better editor, or even just better editing, because I said it cuts to Kerry walking and then on the boat and then meeting the brothers, to just cutting back to Zac Efron. It was very objective. It wasn't subjective to Kevin's point of view. That's what I mean by, I don't need him to tell me later on in dialogue. I could have took it in if they just shot it differently, or because it cut to maybe a close up to him looking down instead of the wide shot. Maybe, I don't know, it should have been prepared better. It should have been storyboarded better. It should have been just edited better. Just a little twink to just hit home. This is what Kevin is thinking. This is not what is actually happening.
Yeah.
Do you know?
Sorry to end the flashback section on a bit of a dour note, but we'll jump back into kind of talking about the movie. If Laura would just play that jingle for us. Thank you, Laura. So yeah, then back to kind of talking about the movie. We're continuing the Von Erich curse, and unfortunately we get the passing of Mike, who decides that this life now that he's been handed, where he's no longer himself, isn't worth living. So he downs his pills and he takes a walk out into the field.
During a scene where Kevin and Kerry are having a bicker, because Kerry's trying to force himself to wear the boot strap so he can stand and walk, which is obviously very difficult for him to go back into wrestling. And Kerry hits Kevin, and Kevin chest kicks Kerry to the ground. I think that's the worst of the heatedness between the siblings come to.
Yeah,
that was definitely the worst, where flat out just hit each other.
And it's the fact that it's a over 2 hour movie about wrestling, and this is the only time really that they fight, and it's just knocking him down. You know, Kerry pushes Kevin knocks him down, and then it's immediately helpful.
He hits him. Kerry punches Kevin. He punches him in the face.
And then, you know, he knocks him down and he helps him back up. You know, it's not like it's a, fuck you, I'm away, don't ever talk to me again. It's very much a, like, come on.
They're still there for each other.
Absolutely. There's no doubt in my mind that at any point throughout this film that each of the brothers aren't there for each other. Even when they're at odds, which is a very limited amount of time, but they are still always there for each other.
But they weren't there for Mikey that night, unfortunately, though.
And it's purely down to didn't know. It's tragic. His fate was the worst one for me, honestly, of all of the brothers and everything that happened with his storyline. I felt that the most. I was the saddest for him.
I think at this point we get into a bit of a process where Kevin's not coming home. He's sleeping at the office, and
for fear of the curse.
Fear of the curse of passing it on to his sons. But what was it that made him go back finally? Because once he goes back to live at home, to go with Lily James, a few years have passed, and he's got 2 grown young sons, like probably 6 or 7 or something like that, roughly 5 or 6. And Kerry's off. He's able to walk on too, and he's off wrestling, and he's still the favourite. And it's only Kerry and Kevin left, but he is still the father's favourite. Like, this here is Zac Efron bringing his 2 boys over to see the grandparents, and here's the father. Yeah, he gave Zac Efron, Kevin, the business to run the thing, but he said, I didn't give you that business to sell it off for parts, and look at your uncle, boys. His father's like sitting right there. What a prick. And then we get to Christmas, and okay, Grace is just given the very unfortunate situation that they're in now. Like, the only brothers left are Kerry and Kevin, but you see Kerry, he was definitely high on something when he was home for Christmas, and then even though he's still trying to please his father, give him a present, a gun. He wants him to shoot the gun now. Shoot it now. No, I'm not going to shoot it now. You should shoot a gun when you get it for the first time. I'm not going to shoot it. And they fucking shoot it. So, like, he's...
it's the only time really any of them go mad at the dad. It's the only time really they lash out.
I think that was Kerry's lashing out, but he couldn't stick to it. So he went off to go drink, and then Kevin goes to Kerry, hey, you good? And yeah. And, like, just that little moment was like... You 2 are the only ones left. You gotta have each other's back, and then not too long after that, Kerry calls Kevin, says the wrestling's not going good. He's not feeling good. He's feeling very bad, and it's just Kevin is on the phone, just please tell me where you are. Please, just trying to say what you can in that real life moment. Because the sickness that Kerry has, it feels like this is, yes, the fate maybe you say it was Mikey's, but the struggle that Kerry was going through, it feels like it was the long lasting struggle that he's gone through. Because of all the brothers to have meet the fate that they meet, it feels like Kerry struggled the longest.
Yeah, he had the most pressure for the longest amount of time. Absolutely.
Yes, therefore he went through the most torment.
And it feels like him...
That's how I took it.
Him losing his leg wasn't an excuse. Do you know? In his dad's eyes, that wasn't an excuse. He still needed to do what he could. So, in anyone... like that's a career-ending injury. You lost your foot. But for him, it's a temporary setback that he needs to go. And we see that in certain scenes where he puts the strap on, he tries to go out for a run, and he can barely move. He gets a couple of steps and he's screaming in pain, and he's fighting Kevin to practice training, and at the slightest kind of real push, he's keeled over. So he had the most amount of pressure, and yeah, like it's a different type of pressure. But Kevin then was under the pressure of, like Lily James says earlier, you know, he's got older brother syndrome, that he's now desperate. He's nearly crying on the phone because he knows his brother's going to kill himself, and he wants to do anything and everything in his power to stop that. And then we get that despicable conversation, and you mentioned it a little bit earlier about when he rings the dad and he says, like, I'm really worried for Kerry. I think he's going to hurt himself. and he says, you need to sort that out with your brother. You know, there's no paternal instinct at all that these guys that have lost in the movie, in real life 3, but in the movie 2 sons, one to suicide and one to, let's face it, he was roiding up, he was doing steroids and he ruptured his intestines, so basically kind of killed himself through.
Don't forget the 5-year-old, or the very young, the eldest brother before Zac Efron,
and him as well,
Jack Jr. So in the movie universe, therefore, so far 3, in the real world, in real life 4.
Yeah, but there's no, you know, in the father's head, there's no cause for concern, there's no compassion, there's no, okay, where is he, let's go find him, or anything like that. It's sorted out between the two of yous. And then that leads then into the Kevin's attempt to find Kerry, and he is seconds late. That's heartbreaking as well. It was gut-wrenching. He's seconds late.
He walks into the house with the door open, and he doesn't even get inside the house, and then you hear the gunshot. His reaction, his real life response to it, running over, and he sees Kerry first before we as the audience do, because he shouts no and he finds him by the tree, and then you don't see who's at the tree, but then you see it's Kerry, and he shot himself seconds late. And then just in time for the father to come check out what happened. And then this is the moment I have been waiting for the movie, is to just see Zac Efron just fucking go attempt to murder his father out of pure years upon years of frustration and the iron fist and the iron boot and the iron claw that he had him under. There you go, David.
Yeah.
But so he really was strangling his father. He's telling him, you should have looked after him. Pure like this is what any one of the brothers should have done. And this is what it took. It took the deaths of all of his brothers for him to actually respond to do it. To stand up to his father. To fully, properly take out his father if he could. But that's it. He carries his brother inside. Puts him on the table. Thinks of that scene of heaven. And then he sells the wrestling business. But whatever. He sells it to look after his family, the non-Von Erich family, with his wife and his children, and we know we get that ending where Kevin does have that happy ending where his kids have kids now. We can talk about that in a sec, but I liked how that last scene, some time has passed, all the children are gone, and the husband goes in and he says, "Hey honey, what's for dinner?" And the wife, who was having a conversation with Mikey, who was still slow at the time, talking about a painting she made and why she never did it, and now she's painting again. I didn't cook any, and so he's just standing there, the husband, sticking out like a sore thumb. Yeah, clueless.
His dinner's not made for him. He's not eating.
Yeah, he doesn't know what to do. Like what? That's his defeat. He's lost everything, and I think he subconsciously knows it, but I think he's just too arrogant and too egotistic to actually realise it. But he does notice something's off.
Yeah.
So
and the
real life Fritz, the father, died the year we were born. So
wow. And then the scene that got me then finally was the Kevin sitting out watching his sons play. And I just sat there and I thought about it, and the scene was playing out, and I was like, oh, I bet he just wishes he had his brothers. He could just play football with his brothers again. And then
because we're seeing the shot of him looking at his brother, but we don't see his face. We don't see Kevin's face. And then we do cut to Zac Efron's face, and the tears are just pouring out of him.
And that's when I went. That's when I started crying. I was like, he just wants this. He just wants to play with his brothers again. And then the two kids come up to him and say like, oh, you know, why are you crying? And he's like, oh, sorry, a man doesn't cry. And they're like, it's fine, you know, we cry all the time. And that's when it kind of clicks for him that he doesn't have to be like his dad, that he can have a different style of parenting. And it's not that I was ever in fear, I think, of him becoming his dad or anything, but there were slight things like that where he didn't feel like he could show emotion, like he's apologizing to his kids because he's crying. He's upset because his brothers are dead and he wants nothing more than to play with them. So that was a great scene, that it kind of breaks that cycle that he was in, and like that the father gets his comeuppance of this dynasty that he wanted to build. He has nothing. He's no, like, realistically, Kevin, I don't know if he ever changed his name, but none of his grandkids share the Von Erich name, and none of them in wrestling. I know that you said that there's a daughter. Was it David's daughter? That's it currently, or
Kerry's daughter.
Kerry's daughter,
currently a wrestler.
Yeah. So realistically, like, the Von Erich name is lost to history. That father, he died, when we were born, so he's never going to see this movie and see the lasting effects that it'll have. But for him, he got his comeuppance in that unfortunately, and it's a terrible thing to say, that he got his reward, which is his sons are dead and the rest of his family probably not talking to him. So it was, but to end on a positive note, I suppose, that moment of realization, and then they all go and they're throwing the football and having a bit of crack, and then we cut to the final shot, which is Kevin's extended family now, and they all live in the same house, and he's got on a ranch 4 kids, 13 grandkids, and it's a big happy family and all having the crack. And it was just great to see that he got what he wanted in the end, which was not the belt, it was the big family all together.
Yeah. Did you see in that picture, one of the adults is throwing
through the kid
in the air? Yeah. Threw the kid in the air like a fucking football. How the hell is that safe?
Makes for a great. It might not be safe, but it makes for a great photo.
It made for a hell of a photo. And unfortunately, could you imagine it's such a big family Kevin had, and just imagine how big it could have been if his brothers had continued to have families. It's
a real shame. The real loser in this whole situation is Kevin, because of he lost his brothers, his best friends, all of them.
Yeah.
But
Dave. Yeah, this is a good movie. This is a good one.
It's great. I really, really enjoyed it, and it's one that I rate it so highly that as soon as I come out of it, like, I can't wait to see that again, because I think that when I see it again, if it holds up just as well, it'll become one of my favourites. It'll enter that kind of list of my favourite movies of all time.
Still think Zac Efron is still a worthy candidate to be Wolverine?
Yeah, I could see him. I would like to see him maybe move into other dramatic roles. Like, I don't need to see him in a franchise. I always kind of, when he was younger, I would have seen him as a Johnny Storm, but I could absolutely see him as a Wolverine, but would prefer to see him stay in the dramatic roles.
As we would a lot of actors. But anyway, that's a talk for another time. Dave, before we close today's episode, have you got any recommendations for us?
I do. I've got 3 recommendations, if you can believe it.
Holy shit.
I know.
3 recommendations. Alright.
Okay, recommendation number 1. So they're all the same. They're all kind of the same. They're not really the same, but they're the same. All 3 are podcasts. So, first one is called Another Happy Pod. They are kind of similar to us in terms of they talk about movies but look in a more positive light than a negative light. So they release new episodes every Friday, hosted by Nathan and Lawrence. I discovered them, I'd say, about 2 years now at this point, and just kind of went through their back catalogue. So I highly recommend them if you're a podcasting people, which we assume you are because you listen to us. The second one then is Still Got Legs, which is a Doctor Who rewatch podcast. Not really a recommendation for you because I know you don't watch Doctor Who, but it's hosted by the same 2 guys. They rewatch an episode of Doctor Who. They're going through the whole series. So if that's something that you are interested in, then that's a recommendation for me. And then my third recommendation is Make It a Podcast, which is a podcast that we actually did a guest spot on. So we were on last week now at this point. Well, yeah, I've been recording this. So it was last week we discussed Pirates of the Caribbean with Evan and Katie. We had a great old time sailing the seven seas, talking with them. And then I actually did an episode without you. I'm sorry I had to do it without you, but it was about Doctor Who a couple of weeks before. So those are my 3 recommendations there. Another happy pod, still got legs, and making a podcast.
That's alright, David. I'm currently in the search for guest starring in someone else's podcast to just to spite you.
Okay, yeah. I'll take that one. Yeah, it's fine. What about you?
I got a recommendation for this week. It will be released every Thursday for the next 6 weeks. We've already got 2 episodes of it out now. I've watched the first 2 episodes, and it is the season 2 premiere of Halo. Yeah, Halo, the TV show. Season 2, episode 1 and 2 of Halo so far, and I cannot wait to see where the season goes, because I think they are now improving upon the slow-paced and overcombobulated sci-fi elements of, well, that was in season 1, whereas here it feels to be a little bit more faster paced, a little bit more direct, a little bit more of a stronger story, with making better use of its characters at their disposal, hopefully delivering a well-worthy season. Have you watched it?
I have watched it, and I'm glad that you're enjoying it.
I think it's interesting. I think our listeners should know a little bit more about ourselves, especially in the stuff we like to watch and we like to, not watch. You know what I mean?
Listen, I will reserve all of my judgments. I have opinions and I have judgments. I'll reserve that until the end of this season. Okay? And I'll happily discuss it with you then. But I think right now, because I don't want to eat my words, the biggest hope that I can have for this show is that it is a great show. You don't know how desperately I want it to be a great show, but at the moment, it's not. So I'm going to reserve it. The next 6 weeks, hopefully, I will be in the same boat as you. But as of right now, I'm not, and that's as nice as I'll say about it.
Disregard everything David said. Talking Pictures podcast is a safe space for Halo fans of the TV show to come talk about. Please, if you have any questions about the Halo TV show, if you want to get us talking about it, send them in at Talking Pictures pod. Oh wait, no, this is for the Iron Claw today's episode, not Halo. Excuse me, David. Sorry. Our email is talkingpicturespodcast1@gmail.com. We are on Instagram as well as Twitter, and soon to be TikTok, as well as Letterboxd. And if you like today's episode, give us a like, give us 5 stars, costs you nothing, gives us everything. We do appreciate that. Any questions you got in your mind, please send them in. One last thing, if you are struggling with any form of mental health or trauma or difficulties, and you look at this movie and you look at how this movie, as we previously referenced, romanticized the direction that unfortunately lots of people take. Well, before going into that direction, maybe stop and think about what other options you have at your disposal, and talk to a stranger and any helpline, or talk to someone you know you can trust, or talk to someone who you think that maybe can hear you out on your difficulties, and just try to convince yourself that this struggle that you might be going through, if you think that suicide ideation is a permanent solution to your temporary problem, it's not. There are other options. No matter how difficult they are, hard to see, they are there. And everyone's story is different, but I can talk about my story, and you can come through. You can. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, David.
Love you.
You too, bud.